Okay, everybody, I'd like to thank everyone for coming here today. We're here for this purpose here, the Cult in Your Backyard conference, because we're actually in the cult's backyard here, but the cult's actually in somebody else's backyard, and that's East Grinstead. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank East Grinstead Town Council for allowing us this building here. Very grateful thanks to them for doing this, because as you can probably imagine, living in East Grinstead can be quite traumatic sometimes with the presence of the cult. So thank you to them. The way we're going to do things today is we're going to have people here. You should be up here, actually. Oh, we'll stay there, actually, because the way we are, we can do it rather more informally, but we need the microphone here. But yeah, we're going to have like a panel that will take questions and answers, and we're going to do it that way rather than have formal speakers as we've done in the past, because that was an 8-hour marathon, so we don't want to do that. We want to get this thing done, say what we have to say, answer all questions that could possibly be asked, because the one thing that we do that's different from the Scientologists is we communicate, and we're happy to communicate, and we can talk about anything, anytime, with anyone, which theoretically they can as well, but they just don't. So, one of our speakers is Samantha Domingo. She was married to a Scientology celebrity. There's a few of those, as you probably know. Samantha's here to answer questions. We've also have Martin here, who rather wonderfully yesterday, he lost his media virginity with the Evening Standard. Did a wonderful piece, got some fantastic reactions on the online page, both from supporters and detractors. Surprisingly enough, I could actually quote what the Scientology people said. It's the usual thing. Oh, can I just say this is the first time I've ever spoken in front of 8,000 people. This is amazing. Yeah. We also have Stephen Jones. He's going to be here to answer questions. At the moment, he's behind that camera up there. He's a local guy, so he actually lives in the backyard, if you like. And I'm sure his take on things might be very interesting, especially, for anyone from the media who wants to get an idea what's it actually like to be a former Scientologist living in East Grinstead. I don't know. Okay, we also have Terrell here, who represents another Scientology splinter, if I may say that, known as Free Zone. Are you still called the Free Zone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's a differential, like Scientology is actually disintegrating, but as it does, it disintegrates into like different groupings. There are people who still believe in the workability and the helpfulness of Scientology, and of course it does work and help to some degree, otherwise nobody'd do it, But we have independent Scientologists, we have free zone Scientologists, and we actually have ex-Scientologists, the people who want nothing to do with it whatsoever, but they're happy to come to a thing like this. One of those is a man called John McGhee, who's gone to the shop. So when John comes, he'll join us as well. And he's actually the voice of ex-Scientologists today. Everybody else is still a bit of a Scientologist. So that makes things slightly different. Myself, I'm doing this now for the last 4 years, getting more and more empowered as every day goes by. And I'm totally convinced that what I'm doing is the right thing. But then again, so are they. So that again raises problems. I got involved in 1987. I was active for 7 years. And then I spent the next 14 years not actually doing anything in Scientology, but I always intended to go back. I never questioned it. I accepted everything they told me. And then in 2008, when Anonymous began to protest, it caught my attention because I'm a bit of a geek. I love the internet and I couldn't live without it now. I love technology, and I'm told to Google Scientology. I know this is bad, but I decided to do it anyway because I've got big round things here. I can do these things, So I started to look online, and slowly, the covers got lifted. I began to wake up. I'm here today because of that. Thank you, Internet, and thank you, anonymous person that told me to Google Scientology. So there's a few simple house rules. There will be this. Fire exit's there. That's the way to the bathroom, but that could also be used as a fire exit. And if this place does catch on fire, I don't think there'll be any panic or anything. We can get out of here quite safely. We will when we finally get going, we will be talking about... I want to mention this, actually. For people that don't know what this is, COB is chairman of the board, which is David Miscavige. He is the person who runs Scientology. He wasn't the person meant to be running Scientology. That was meant to be a man called Pat Broker. But David Miscavige usurped Pat, or is that the right word to say?
Yeah.
Basically, Pat was sent packing with a box of money and told to GTFO. He has never been heard of since, until actually recently when 2 private investigators came forward and said they'd been following the guy for the last 26 years. So COB is the guy who runs Scientology today. He's also known as other little things like the Little Dictator and all kinds of things. An SP, this is Scientology terminology. And if you don't know what an SP is, the best thing to do, I imagine, is look at something called online called suppressiveperson.com. Is it .com or .org? I'm not sure. You'll find it easily enough, and all the information there is about what is an SP. In Scientology, an SP, do you know how you get like things like the Nazis and the Americans were against the Reds and the Nazis were against the Jews? Well, Scientologists are against the SPs. Because as you're trying to go forward in Scientology and increase your abilities, those people dragging you back, who could be your family, they are the SPs, right? So we are here because we don't like to see people get better and more able. We want to drag them down to the same level as we're at. It's not true. In my opinion, there's actually no such thing as an SP. And I want to claim ownership of the word SP, which is why I'm wearing the I Love SPs badge. Wear it proudly, I mean, that's it. So that explains what that's about. We tried to go in and have a candlelit vigil last night with this and all walk behind it like they did at the Religious Freedom Crusade in Portland in 1984. But that didn't go down too well. Security linked arms and they prevented us from going into Ron's home and the home of Scientology in the UK. So Scientologists were stopped from going in to hold a candlelit vigil for the people who died in and because of Scientology. We all know who they are. Lisa McPherson comes to mind first of all. Quentin Hubbard comes to mind. I mean, it's horrible when you actually start to look at the deaths that have occurred in Scientology. Because the interesting thing about Scientology and Scientologists is they have no responsibility for anything bad that happens. Something bad happens to you, it's your fault, So it's quite a hard thing to bear, that one. Anyway, quickly moving on and letting me go quiet and let other people speak. If you do want to ask anyone on the panel a question, and you want to say who you are, that's okay. Like, for example, my name's blah, blah, I'm from blah. That's okay too. If you don't want to say who you are, that's also okay. If you want to be anonymous, we are familiar with dealing with anonymous people. So that's okay to do that. So that's up to you. That's about all I want to say, really. I want to throw the conference open and invite questions to any member of the panel, except there's only 2 here right now.
Terrell,
do you want to come up now, Terrell, and join us?
And Vickey.
Vickey, by all means, do come and join us now. I didn't introduce you, Vickey, but Terrell could do that, actually. Yeah. So I'll sit down and shut up. Let's get the show on the road. Thank you. Questions?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
My name's Link. I'm a vlogger, I guess, on YouTube. I'm not attached to Scientology at all. I don't have any experience of it. I'm wondering, what was the allure, the initial kind of attraction to Scientology for different people on the panel?
Okay, I'll go first. All right. I'm sure it's different things for different people.
Yeah.
For myself, I think I read a couple of basic books. Self-analysis, I think, was the first one I read. A New Slant on Life. And the books sort of made some sort of sense. The book Dianetics was very interesting to me because it talks about the mind and mental image pictures and so on, which was of a particular interest to me. And on the face of it, it seemed to explain a lot of things which were hitherto a mystery to me. And it was as simple as that. I just got interested from there and just decided I wanted to learn more from there, really.
For me, I was fresh out of college and was on a spiritual journey, which began in Amsterdam, funnily enough. Was on a spiritual journey to find I left college and sort of at some point realized I didn't really understand enough about life to make any life decisions yet, and I wanted to take sort of that gap year and go off and find answers to life and live life a little bit and make a bit of money and have some fun. That's why I started in Amsterdam, and there I ran into somebody who was a Scientologist, and I was directed to the organisation in Amsterdam and read Dianetics and started asking questions about who we are, where we go, like those age-old questions that people would love to have answers. Where do we come from? What happens when we die? Is that it? Is that the end? Was when I was born, was that the beginning, or And I guess at some point Scientology seemed to be able to answer those questions at some point in time. I think that was, I don't know if that was true for you, but there seemed to be some promise that I would be able to understand all of those things. Yeah. So for me, that was the lure of Scientology.
Thanks. Terrell?
I was introduced to Scientology by someone I used to work with, and she came to live in my big empty flat. And her friend was a Scientologist, so I said, "What's that?" And she started telling me best she could, which wasn't bad as it happens. And I just kept grilling at her and getting more information. And I found it very interesting, so I went and bought a book. And I found the philosophy of Scientology was something that fitted me. Prior to that, I was sort of verging between agnostic and atheist. I'm very rational, sort of skeptic. But with Scientology, I found something that had some sort of structure and order. It's actually got a load of axioms, hundreds of them. Rather than saying believe in God, why believe in something? But read these things, do they make sense to you? And then furthermore, you can read the technologies of the counselling and practice them, use them. Do they help you? So that was what attracted me, the fact that it's very useful in everyday life and to enhance your spiritual development.
So the practical aspect.
Yes, yeah. And incidentally, I probably know more than anyone else on this panel about the independent or free zone Scientology, if anyone wants questions on that.
There are two separate things, independent and free zone.
Well, I disagree with you.
And here we go.
Can we stick with the original question? We'll move on to that later if we
get
time.
Yes, moving swiftly
Vickey,
along.
Would you like to?
Yeah, just briefly, I'd been searching through Buddhism, something called Subud, which was pretty much from the Philippines. I've been doing sort of spiritual practices, and I was already very interested in looking for development spiritually, but this hadn't really been practical enough for me. And in 1972, I went into Tottenham Court Road in London and did a personality test, and somebody pretty much convinced me that this was a more practical way of me reaching a more enlightened state of being. And I was pretty convinced by a communication course I did. I joined staff in 1972 and did the communication course and felt, this is it for me, I want to give this to others, and I joined staff in 1972.
Wow.
And I started to become an auditor, which is to give this counselling to others, and I've been doing that since 1972.
What, an auditor?
An auditor comes from the Latin word audio, to listen, and the communication course is the first training of an auditor to listen. It's communication skills, and it's the very basic training to teach you to listen to another person so that you can start to facilitate their spiritual development. So all the counselling is basically a spiritual development, but it is about listening to another person. And I felt that this was what I needed and what I wanted to do for other people.
Right. Oh, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Would you like anybody who's on the panel but not sitting up here to take the question?
What about you?
Myself?
Yeah.
Again, much like Martin, I read the Dianetics book. It was introduced to me by my brother, who suggested I read it. Then my ex-wife read it, and before too long they were both doing courses, and my brother had actually joined the Sea organisation, like a lot of people here. I found it fascinating to some degree, but I wasn't totally interested. I read it, okay, fine, some person has some ideas about the mind, great, you know. But when I did get further involved, what attracted me was the promise of how effective and how much better I could become as a person. Not for selfish reasons, because I've always been kind of one that would like to help people. But the idea that I could become more intelligent, even the crazy stuff like telekinesis and all that kind of stuff, I was attracted to that. I found that very, very attractive. The fact they had to pay for it really should have rang alarm bells, but it didn't. I bought into it, and here I am today. So, yeah. Steve, would you like to take the question? Or John, would you want to take a question here?
Okay.
It's the first question. You've missed nothing by going to the show. What was the question again?
The question was about the initial Scientology. What was it?
The initial attraction. Okay, well, it was the weirdness and the fact that it was the controversy surrounding it, and that if it was that good, if it was that controversial, it must be fairly good. And if you pay that much money for its services, then you must be getting what you pay for. So I says, yeah, why not give it a go? And at the time, if somebody warned me against it, that was a red rag to a bull, I would definitely go there, And I wasn't interested in the betterment of the human race. It was more for selfish reasons I went in. If it delivered what it promised, then I was willing to give it a go. I had no interest in clearing the planet or taking part in its anti-drug campaigns. All the humanitarian stuff, I had no interest in that, genuinely. But I figured that if it was part of it, if it ran alongside it, then yeah, double bonus, help yourself first. Then if humanity gets helped along the way, yeah, pretty good. But other than that, yeah, it was the lure of the controversy and the stigma that surrounded that got me in.
So it was already controversial?
Yeah, I was going to go there. I saw the signs years ago on the street, the premises where it was in Dublin, and I said, someday I'll go in there, just finish off the other paths I'm on right now, because I go through more phases than a building site when it comes to self-discovery and different religious belief systems, So I figured Scientology was definitely on the cards at some time down the line. That was it.
Thanks, John.
All right.
Steve, would you like to take that question from your position over there as a panel member?
Come down.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I was a bit like John. I was in really, at the start, for, I suppose you could term it, selfish reasons. At the time that I got involved with Scientology, I was, how old was I, 22, and I was at college. But I wasn't very happy, and my life, I suppose, to a certain extent, was a bit of a mess. I had a bit of a chaotic home life for the previous 3 or 4 years. I was very unhappy. Although I was doing a course college, I wasn't very happy doing it. It wasn't the one I really wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. And I suppose I was just sort of freewheeling. I suppose that was the thing. After school, gone to college, and the idea was get a degree and then go on and do something else. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I got I suppose I was prime material, although I didn't know it at the time, for Scientology recruitment, because a lot of people are drawn in at times of crises or at low points in their life. And in fact, in Scientology, you have these what are called dissemination drills, where you actually, the whole object is to try and get people into Scientology. And one of the main things is you look for people's ruin. Now, the ruin would be something that's ruining their life. So basically, you ask probing questions, you get something that they want to, that they think is having a detrimental effect in their life. And then, of course, you say, well, of course, Scientology can help you with that. And then you move them over into the point of thinking, well, maybe I can do something about this. And then you get drawn in gradually. And myself, it was a question of, I was out in Brighton, this is early 1986, so quite a few years ago, and I was out with some friends, and we were just on the way home to go back to the car to drive home. And someone approached us on the street and asked us some questions. I wasn't very interested, so I just gave some flippant answers. And then she said, well, would you like to find out how you can achieve some of these things that you just talked about? And I said, no, I'm not interested. I was about to walk off. And one of my friends said, oh yeah, okay. And she led us up to this building, up some stairs into this building. And at the time, it did seem very strange to me that somebody would be doing this at something like, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the evening on a Sunday. And then she showed us this book called Dianetics, and she explained all these techniques in there and stuff, and it looked quite interesting actually. And when I started reading over it, and my friend wasn't very interested, he was just about to go, and I rather stupidly said, well, yeah, okay, I'll buy a copy of this. So, and I think she was quite surprised, because I hadn't said anything much in the interview at that point, but it did strike me as being very interesting. So, and I got it. Sorry.
The book struck you.
Well, it wasn't just the book, but it was the fact that you were describing a sort of technique or therapy, as Hubbard referred to it at the time. It was a way of using the techniques in the book to improve your life. And he talked about improving your memory, intelligence, basically every aspect. And I took this book home and I read it in about 2 days, and I just couldn't believe it. I thought, wow, this is fantastic. You've got a way of changing someone. And the way I saw it at the time, because I was a big sort of I was a big science fiction fan, and the way I saw it was that this is like the next step in the evolution, of humankind. Because Hubbard talked about Homo sapiens and then Homo novus, which was somebody who had achieved a state of clear through Dianetics, and he actually called it Homo novus. It was like a new state of human beingness, as it were. And I thought, well, this is fantastic. And so I thought, I don't know if it's true or not, but I have to find out. So that's what pulled me in to start with. I thought, I can change things. If I can improve my intelligence and memory, then I'm just going to breeze through my degree course, which in fact never happened. In fact, it was the opposite. I got so wrapped up in Scientology, I failed my exams, so I dropped out of college, so I didn't get anything at the end of it, which is a bit unfortunate. But of course, that worked in the favour of Scientology again, because after I'd failed my exams at college, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I had sort of nothing. I had a couple of A-levels and no degree, and I thought, what am I going to do? And then I was told about this job in working for staff in Scientology, and I just sort of walked into that. And then it was just, literally between the time I first read Dianetics and then joining staff, which was in the Sea organisation, it was only 3.5 months. So it was just like, you're falling onto a conveyor belt and you're just whisked along, and you almost like you have no control over it. Other people are pulling the strings, and you don't know it at the time, because I was relatively young and naive. I think I was 22 when I joined. And the trouble is, when you're put into the Sea Org, you're very quickly indoctrinated into the way that Hubbard thinks that you should behave or you should do things. And so what I didn't understand was that I was being brainwashed. I would have vehemently denied it if someone said I'd been brainwashed, but that's the point. You are being brainwashed and conditioned to think that way. Now, you're told about all these things in Scientology
and the aim is for total freedom. But the trouble is, the good things in Scientology, which I will admit there are some techniques that can help you and definitely benefit people, although I don't call myself a Scientologist anymore, I will agree with that. But the fact is that you're turned away from that and you're moulded into becoming what the Church of Scientology wants you to be as a Scientologist, which in Miscavige's world, and I have to say, I think a good part, not all, but a good part of what's wrong with the Church of Scientology today is probably down to Miscavige, is that you want to be that image of what he wants you to be, which is someone who's very compliant, does what they're told, hands over money whenever they ask for it. And so, coming back to your original question, it was for selfish reasons, but the reason I probably stayed in and continued was because I thought I could help, especially when I joined staff, and make a difference and really, create an effect on this world and actually help other people. So, and this is another thing that happens when they recruit Scientologists. They look for help, people who are willing to help. And I think that's very deliberate, because they know if somebody's willing to help other people, they're probably far more likely to give up their own comfort and wealth and everything else in helping somebody else. If it was purely for selfish reasons, people would say, well, I haven't got a lot out of it, so I'll leave. But if it's like, well, maybe I haven't got so much out of it, but I can help other people. And even to the extent where staff members are told that they will receive auditing, which will enable them to get up the bridge, but the fact is they don't get a lot of auditing. I remember a few years ago I was speaking to a staff member at St Hill, just up the road, and said to her, well, I don't think it's right, Wendy, that you're on staff, you're working full time, and you're not getting up the bridge. And she said, well, maybe we can't get up the bridge, but we can help others. And I thought, my God, she's gone from the point of thinking, coming into Scientology, thinking she can go up the bridge and have all these wonderful abilities and powers, to thinking, well, I can't do that now, but I've given all that up just for other people. And that was just absolutely horrible.
Thanks, Steve. Can I just butt in at that point? Something Steve said about the ruin-finding techniques in Scientology, which is how you take a person who is not a Scientologist and make them become a Scientologist. What we're interested in now is getting people who are Scientologists and bringing them out. And we actually have to do the same thing. We have to find the ruin in Scientology. And you mentioned again, like, they're not getting up the bridge as a staff member. That could be the ruin. After 24 years, I still haven't made my first step on the bridge.
Does everybody understand the bridge? Everybody understand it?
Good point.
The bridge is lots of levels of auditing.
Thanks,
what
Steve.
we do, you achieve something, and we call it a bridge, and it's supposed to be the bridge to total freedom.
Yeah, and the whole point is that you move up this bridge, which is a strange kind of a bridge. It's more like a vertical ladder. Like a real bridge is like that. But anyway,
down on the other side.
Yeah. Thanks a million, Steve. Anyway, okay. Anyone got a question for the panel? Go ahead.
I have 3 questions. First of all, do you, the X's, the people who are independents, and the people who are free zoners, do you all acknowledge now that you were involved in something in brainwashing?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, actually, I got so much out of it, and I continued to get so much out of it when I came out, because I was very lucky to get a very good auditor who was an independent Scientologist. That my freedom, I actually attained it, but I also went to India and continued my meditation. I continued in Buddhism, so I don't know what was my auditing and what was my sort of religious freedom. So I continued with freedom of mind. So I don't know really how much was my auditing and how much was my continuation, because my freedom is pretty solid, so no one brainwashed me.
Okay. Excellent.
But I suppose when I was like being controlled, but I suppose I'd had so much auditing that's how I got thrown out, because I wasn't going to be told what to do. And when I sort of put my foot down, no, you are not going to tell me what to do, I hit a brick wall, and they threw me out. So I wasn't brainwashable, actually, because the auditing had produced a free being. And a free being couldn't survive in there, you see. A free being just couldn't survive in that machine.
Yeah.
So they threw me out, which was very painful because they tried to break up my family. They tried to take my husband away from me. They tried to take my children away from me. They actually sort of interviewed a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old. It was extremely painful.
And were your children in Scientology as well?
They were at the Scientology school. I mean, I wouldn't wish it on anyone what I went through. And I don't think I would have willingly gone through it. But what I'm saying is I was a free being and I couldn't survive in that. And it was a horrible process being kicked out. But no, I'm saying that the technology of Ron Hubbard actually produced a free being, and a free being just couldn't survive in that organisation that Miscavige had now taken over.